Hello, my name is Mark Westermeier, and I've been involved with parks for the last 17 or 18 years. I started off as a consultant back in the early days of 2003, and my role at that point in time was to try and help the park board and staff get their arms around building Central Park in the Monon Community Center. We had 8 employees at the time, and was had to really figure out how do you scale a department from 8 employees up to the hundreds that we would need. How do you hire them? How do you find them? And so as a consultant, that was part of my role of helping direct them. Then I became the interim director because they decided they didn't need the director at the time, and I took over as interim. And part of the role I had there was actually looking for a replacement for myself. But as time went on and I worked with the board and we got to know each other, I fell in love with Carmel Clay Parks. It had a mission. It had a community sense to it. We had support of the community that was something I'd never seen before from any type of group, having normally seen that in the business world. You had customers and they came and they went. Parks are a different breed. People love parks. Now, Carmel was a little bit different, and I'd been living in different states and different cities and knew a little bit about parks as a visitor. And Carmel didn't really have parks as you might know them in Illinois or Minnesota or Wisconsin or some of the other states that have phenomenal park systems. So that was a real challenge to come in. So I took over as director, and we continued to work to build the before and after school program, which became the ESE program. The community center got built. We started building other parks, and it became a passion to really understand parks can make a difference that I would have never imagined. I have a good friend of mine that retired at 50, and he told me, what he does, and he goes fishing, has a lot of fun, that kind of thing. My greatest achievements as a human being have been after I was 50, working with Carmel Clay Parks and working with the community to make a better community, a better park system for everyone here. Today, I'm retired in 2018, and I'm now on the park board. It's challenging times once again, and I felt a need to come back and work with our staff, work with our elected officials as we get through the trying times of what COVID has left us with. One of the things I'm most proud of is our staff. And our staff today is different than the staff a year ago and different from the staff 5 years ago. But every single member of our staff, no matter what point in time they've been involved with Carmel Clay Parks, have been dedicated. And it didn't matter the position, it didn't matter, if you're in management, if you're a lifeguard, if you're front desk staff, if you were tasked with cleaning the restrooms in the park, cutting the grass, whatever the function was. Each person is an important, integral part of making the park system work. And their dedication to their jobs and their task is probably just the most important, greatest accomplishment I think that we've done as a department. It's something the community probably doesn't really understand or know anything about, and it's a culture that has become ongoing. And as people leave and new people come in and they grasp the culture and what we're trying to accomplish, it's been unlimited as to what we've been able to accomplish. It's the key factor in being able to be an accredited agency, to win 2 different gold medals as an agency for our excellence, a feat that very few park systems in the country have been able to do. And I think as long as we continue with the trust of our community, with dedicated staff that believe in what we're doing, we'll continue to grow and excel at what we're doing. Did I answer that correct? I think the biggest accomplishment the Carmel Clay Parks has actually accomplished in the last 30 years is something that most people might not expect. It's trust. Trust the community. It's something that took me a while to really understand, wrap my head around how that works. But when we went out into the community and talked about building Central Park and the community center, that became the largest single bond issue, property bond issue, that had been issued for parks in the state of Indiana and quite a few other states, if not all of them, at the time. Now, in order to stop that bond from going through, the opposition to the park growth had to be 100 people. They needed 100 signatures. So the remonstrators, or the people opposed to parks growth, could not get 100 signatures. In a city the size of Carmel, that's almost unimaginable that you couldn't get 100 people to oppose a project of $55 million at the time. But it also spoke to the organization that had occurred from our park board, from our staff, from elected officials, and other people, stakeholders in the community that really believed in the mission, the goals, and the future of Carmel Clay Parks. That has to be, and continues to be, in my opinion, the single largest accomplishment of the park system. Even today, you see that. Just a few years ago, when we were looking to add a new attraction to the water park, our staff came up with a phenomenal idea, and they said, we need a flow rider. Nobody has that really in the state of Indiana. It's not known. It has revenue streams that help with the sustainability of the park system. It has learning. It can be used with people with disabilities for training so that they can actually participate just like a person with all their abilities. It's an amazing, amazing thing if you haven't ever seen it or tried it. Now, if you're my age, you might want to consider not trying it, because I did. I was pretty good right up until the time I fell and dislocated my shoulder, which actually then turned into a little bit more than that. And the nurses were just horrified that someone my age would be out there with the kids trying to be 18 again. So it's a lot of fun, and it sucks you no matter what your age is. But aside from that, what happened is this idea was floated by staff to our management team. We thought it was a great idea. We researched it along with our staff. We took it to elected officials and said, we'd like to do this, and we need the money to spend to build this feature by next summer. This thing flew through. There was not one objection from anyone in the community, anyone on the park board, anyone on city council, anyone on township board for us to move forward. That only happens when they have trust in what you're doing as a park system, that you're going in the direction that the people want, that you're prepared and moving forward. So that has to be, I think, the single biggest accomplishment we've had, and what is most cherished going forward, that we continue to earn and keep the respect and trust of the community in everything that we do. I'm often asked what my favorite park is, and that's truly a loaded question. Probably my favorite park is the park I'm going to visit next, or it might be the park I visited last. Don't really know. But each park has its own character, its own style, its own feel in the community. And sometimes you have to look at, how do you feel? You know, if you're really feeling like communing in nature, walking in Central Park in the East Woods is a great way to connect with nature. Another one is Cool Creek when you're walking around the creek. But probably, I would say, for the real nature experience, that has to be along the White River. In Hazel Landing Park, when you can walk the trails through there along the river, you can see people playing disc golf. You might see an eagle fly down the river and do hunting. uh, for food. But, you know, the best park is the one you're at. It's really hard to imagine where Carmel Clay Parks might be in another 30 years. It's hard to believe where we are for the first 30 years. But one of the premises of parks from the time I started, and it was actually going on before then, our early park board set sort of a benchmark for the department, and that was to fill the unfilled need. In communities, there's always needs that sometimes churches are taking care of, or businesses, or other city organizations. Uh, some cities might have a YMCA that's doing it. Here we have gyms and other activities that are going on. But oftentimes there are some hidden, unfilled needs. Finding those needs and doing something to create a program or activity to address that is key. It's really what we've done for the last 30 years. And when I talk about that, there's so many programs, especially our programs for people with disabilities, was all born out of unfilled needs. When we started early on, we were doing Easter egg hunts. And the Easter egg hunts were just crazy things where staff worked for a couple months to put on an event that probably lasted no longer than about 24 seconds when the kids went. And it was great. But then ultimately other organizations said, hey, that's a cool idea, we'll start doing it. So once other organizations, the churches and other businesses started putting on their Easter egg hunts, we made a decision as a department that, you know, that was an unfilled need. We did it. We now have participation by other groups. There's no reason for us to continue it. Let's move on to the next unfilled need. We did a Touch a Truck program a number of years ago, and we grew that program for virtually just a few vehicles that belong to the city and some other government agencies to really a massive event. And then other organizations, some surrounding Carmel, some in Carmel, started doing similar type programs. Once again, it's time for us to move on from that point and search out a new unfilled need. And I think regardless of where we're going to be in 30 years, if the department and the system through our elected officials, our park board members continue to follow that mantra that the unfilled need needs to be served and look for it. It's our staff that will find out that unfilled need and bring it to us. And that's when we have to listen, we have to embrace it, we have to move on. And if we're doing that, we will always be adapting, improving the department, and meeting the needs of the community. I've never been known to just have one idea that we should follow. And to try and come up with what's the one thing the community should know about Carmel Clay Parks isn't an absolute impossibility to answer. But there are a couple. The first is staff. Our staff is the most dedicated staff. The one thing to really consider when you're using a park and you see our staff, whether it's lifeguards, front desk staff, fitness staff, before and after school program staff, we do what we do when others are playing. In other words, we're the ones that are working when the community goes out to play. That takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of really strange hours at times to ensure that our programs are successful and that our participants enjoy those programs. And part of that is that our staff has really risen to the challenges over the year to ensure that our programs are the best, that there's not a business or anybody else doing a program any better than we are doing. We're always searching for ways to do it better, make the experience for the park users better. And that goes hand in hand with nature, because parks are a lot about nature programs, nature cleanups of invasive species, doing the right thing, planting the right plants in a park. And that's one of the things our staff has just been all over, especially in the last 10 years, and that is to ensure that our parks are doing the right things from an environmental perspective, whether they're rain gardens, butterfly gardens, prairie to bring wildlife back into, creek restorations, so many different activities, all about environment. What we've learned as a department over the years is that if you're doing things right environmentally, it's also long-term great economical payback. Most people don't get that. They think, oh, it costs more to do things environmentally friendly. It often does up front, but 10 years out, 20 years out, it was one heck of a great investment for the community. And when I walk around the parks today and I see the vibrancy of the plants that we have growing, and knowing that those are happening on their own, they're the native species that have lived in this area for eons. And we've brought them back in, put them in the right places with the right soils, the right trees, that nature starts working together in Indiana just like it was supposed to in our community.